Welcome to Property Perspectives. Join me, JG Kemp, your host, as we embark on an exciting journey through the world of real estate and life each week. All right, we're going to explore property ownership, investment strategies, and the impact on our daily lives. So get ready for an exhilarating ride with our host today, David Brooke.
What's happening, man? How are you? Thank you for having me here.
Good. So Mr. David is a realtor with EXP, or broker?
Yeah, so I'm a broker and I'm a team leader at EXP Realty.
Okay, all right. What's an average day for Mr. David look like?
All right, so an average day. So I wake up in the morning, get my workout in. After my workout, I eat the same boring breakfast every day, which is 4 eggs and a cup of blueberries and 30 grams of oatmeal. And then I do, I get my daughter to school. And then after that, I head to the office, and I typically have a very laid out day. Every day of the week is pretty much the same. So every Monday kind of looks the same. Every Tuesday, they all look the same. It's a pretty scheduled plan for me every week, which keeps it consistent, which is great. And it might be boring for some people, but it gets the job done.
Got it. So what type of work are you doing?
So I'm in the business of training, motivating, and leading real estate agents. So I run a real estate team, and the real estate team is based in Connecticut. We also have an office in Rhode Island, in Providence. We have a spot in Boston that we just recently opened up, and then we have one guy down in Tampa. And so my job as the leader of the company is to cast the vision for them, and truly to keep the team in a consistent manner, just like my schedule, doing the things that we should do every day as real estate agents. And my value proposition to all who are a part of my company on my team is a 3-pillared approach of training, support, and leads. And so my job as the captain of the ship is to provide value for training every single week, value for support for the agents to be able to save time and make more money, and then the value of leads, being able to generate their own and grow their own business, but also provide opportunities for them as well. So that's my job. Got
it. Okay, so before EXP, where were you?
So I could probably step back a little bit. I started in the industry as a real estate appraiser. So that was back in 2009. I started there. And even before that, I had no intention of being in real estate. So I was actually on the course to be a pastor at a church. Really? So that was like my goal, man. I was mentorship had been like a big part of my growing up.
That's great.
I'm one of those guys who would like kind of go off the rails if I didn't have enough support and guidance in the background. And so I had some support and guidance at times to time in my life, and I loved music, and that was like my thing. So I went to school to basically learn how to pastor and play music. Wow. Okay. And so that was my deal. And then, part of that process and part of the story is that, mom was, she was married to a guy at a time, and, not to get into all the details, but things were a little bit rough at home. There was some drug, stuff involved, and I had to come home. And so I went into, waiting tables, and I learned a lot there about, people interactions, but sooner or later that led me into doing construction. And I started doing construction, and I worked for a builder for many years. And then eventually, as 08 happened, the crash of 08 in the real estate market, I found myself without a job, and just some really interesting experience in how I got into the real estate appraising world. So,
got it.
Yeah.
So being an appraisal, that's a process, right? A pretty long process.
It is a long process. It's funny. I was just on a podcast earlier today where we were talking about like the process to get into it. So the process to be a real estate agent, many people know, in like Massachusetts, you can get your license in like 2 weekends. You can go up there and it's like 2 full weekend courses, and then you're done. Whereas in real estate appraising, there's a 75-hour course that you go through, which just like literally lets you in the door. But it lets you in the door to be able to be under someone's, essentially like their tutelage, and they're a supervisor to you. So the best way I could describe it for real estate agents is if you were a real estate agent and every time you wanted to book a showing, you had to have your broker follow you along, whether or not you knew how to show a house or not. That's the process of being a real estate appraiser. That supervisor has to do pretty much everything with you. And on every report that you submit, the supervisor has to review it and sign off. And there's 2 boxes where you sign off as the provisional appraiser and the supervisor signs off on theirs. And in order to earn the opportunity, in order to get out from under that, if you could call it, to be able to go kind of like independent, be able to flap your wings or stay where you are with that supervisor, you need 2,500 hours of logged appraisal experience signed off by your supervisor with specific notes on every single appraisal that you completed, with the notes on what you learned during that appraisal. It's absolutely intense.
It got to be intense. I mean, 2,500 hours, right? Most appraisals that come out that I know of are only there for 15, 20 minutes, half hour, right? So you had to do a lot of appraisals.
Yeah, and so like much of the work of an appraiser has to do with the analysis on what factors are causing a property to be worth what it's worth. And there could either be economic factors or governmental factors, and then what's applying value to the property? What's the highest and best use for a piece of real estate? Is it used in the condition that it's in? Okay, most of the time in the residential aspect, that's the case. It's fine to be a residence. But if you're dealing in the commercial world or mixed use or anything else, or especially land, it's going to be, what should we use this property for? And if my buyer was a different, depending on the buyer, just like beauty is in the eye of the beholder, so is value. And so you really do need to learn a whole list of different types of values. I actually have a course on different types of values and the valuation. So I run an appraisal course that people can buy if they're real estate agents. And it really helps you understand. If you ever struggled with like, man, I wish I understood how to understand value better, that course is just fantastic.
Oh, really? Where do you get that course at?
You can certainly find it on, reach out, contact me. You can find it on a bunch of my social platforms, but yeah, we'll hang with your podcast, man. I won't sell anything here. So.
No, all good. That's why you're here, Hey,
yeah.
We're all realtors. I always look at realtors as family, especially when you're doing this to provide income for your family full time.
For sure. Yeah. I think value is one of the hardest things for many real estate agents to understand and grasp, because it's easy to look at comps that are in the area, especially if you're doing just like a single family residential property or a condo or something, and you're like, okay, well, I see, these properties that are the same size and square footage, and they could be within a mile, or they could sold within the last 90 days. But I see some selling at $400,000, another selling at $600,000, another selling at $800,000. Like, which one is the best comp? And it's really, really challenging in the beginning in order to understand that, which is why I built this course. And it allows people to just truly understand what are maybe 6 or 7 different types of value that you could possibly consider, because your client may be sitting across the table and in their mind, they're thinking of one type of value and you're thinking of another type of value. And when you're trying to talk to them, you're actually talking in different languages. Because people talk about time on on the market, which in the appraisal world, we talk about exposure time, or they might say, what could I possibly get for this property? And that's called possible value rather than probable value. And so there's all these different techniques and terms that as a real estate agent, we kind of defer to the real estate appraiser community in order to handle, when really we should take some time to learn how to talk about that and articulate that to our clients, because they are probably thinking of these different types of values in their mind and really how they got there in the first place. So
that was going to be my next question. How do you translate that to a client?
Yeah. Yep. So clients have many times, sellers and buyers have different objectives in their mind. So buyers typically, no one wants to overpay for a property and they don't want to make a mistake. And a seller doesn't want to undersell their property, their asset, whatever that is, and they also don't want to make a mistake. So one of the first, suggestions that I often give real estate agents is to, let's just call out the elephant in the room. Call out the biggest objection that somebody would have, or the biggest concern or fear that they've got in their heart. And if you just say, hey, listen, Jay, I just want to let you know that I don't want you to overpay for this property. And I also don't want you to make a mistake. Pause. Now you've let the client know, I understand and I see you. I hear you, I understand you. Now when they say, okay, well, I know you don't want me to overpay for this property, let's talk about value. Now I get to say, well, let me just explain a couple of different ways that people will look at value, because not only was the seller looking at one type of value, but the other buyers in this market might also look at a different type of value. And now all of a sudden you're thinking to yourself, oh, okay, how do we all talk the same language? And I realized that those agents that know and understand how to speak the language of the seller and understand the language that they're talking back, now their offer, when it's spoken in that language, now all of a sudden it's received well by that seller. And then truly, imagine that you're a buyer and you're speaking a different language, and you come into the scenario and your real estate agent knows how to speak seller language, but you've never been educated on how to speak seller language as the buyer. You all of a sudden feel the same way that someone who is maybe of another country comes to America and you're like, no, you must speak English or you must do that. It's like this forced assimilation where it doesn't feel good. And it feels like you don't have the courtesy to care and understand my culture. That same person who's a buyer is likely going to understand and feel that the same way. They're going to be like, well, I feel like you're making me, or you're asking me to overpay for a property or remove contingencies that I don't feel comfortable doing. And that's simply because they haven't understood the language and the culture of the seller. And so the educational part that we have as real estate agents, as experts, is to be able to teach people how to speak buyer and how to speak seller in the same way that in high school we learned to speak English and we learned to speak Spanish. And so why? Because, our country has high populations of both. So you would do well in to understand both cultures and both languages the same way as when you're a buyer or a seller or interacting with both. It's important to understand those. And both of those relate to one singular universal language, which all people can understand, which is value. And they need to understand that value.
That's interesting that you said that. What do you consider yourself, a buyer agent or a listing agent?
Like I said, I probably consider myself a team leader. So my skill set is truly to train, lead, motivate agents and make the landscape of real estate as simple as possible. So I've been honored to have been called a teacher and a mentor to many, and I'm grateful for that. My hope is to explain what I've learned over a decade of knowledge of failures. And hopefully my job is to save people the scars that I've received going through this business. And that sounds like almost like a little bit like a martyr, but it's more or less like if you saw someone learn any sort of craft and they practice it for 10,000 hours, and you've probably heard of the law of 10,000, which is that if you practice any craft for about 10,000 hours, at some point in time now that qualifies you as a master, because you've been able to get to that point of really understanding the pitfalls and the overcoming nature of the entire craft, and you're able to see where the pitfalls could occur for others and where they can overcome. And if you can articulate that, now all of a sudden, that brings a lot of value to you. So I classify myself more as a team leader who's spent time both with buyers, sellers, and then breaking that down to tenants, landlords, investors of all kind, commercial, residential. I've worked in industrial. We've sold weed farms. I've literally worked in pretty much any space. And so I wouldn't call myself an expert in some of those more ancillary businesses or spaces or asset classes, more specifically. And I've worked primarily in the residential industry. But in that, I would probably say right now for myself, I do still sell. And I'm probably 90% on the seller side and 10% on the buyer side, if you kind of looked at my stats.
Got it. So, you came from Caldwell Banker. You went to EXP, correct?
Well, I was never at Coldwell.
Sorry about that.
No, you're okay.
Keller Williams.
Yeah. So the progression for kind of where I was a real estate appraiser. I walked into an Engel and Volker's office, which was like 12, 13 years ago. There was a broker who opened up an Engel and Volker's, which is exclusive, high-end German real estate brand. They're like, I sell, yachts and mega mansions and all this stuff. Yep. So I thought, well, if I go and work there, right, like, Jay, if you had a choice to sell a $200,000 house or a $2 million house, and you knew they were both going to sell, which one would you want? And the obvious choice is the $2 million one, right? And so you think, okay, great. So I'm going to do that. So I go in there, and I thought I was hot shit because I was a real estate appraiser, and it ended up that I was selling $60,000 condos. And, I was encouraged to dress super well, maybe not as nice as you. That awesome tie, by the way.
Yeah,
but yeah, man, I thought it was all about the brand. Right. And I ended up realizing really quickly that it was about my network and my sphere and the people who knew me. And then also I had to break it down between all these ways that I could earn business. Mm-hmm. And I quickly found it had nothing to do with the brand. It had everything to do with my own personal efforts and what I was doing every single day.
Absolutely.
Right. And so I went from there, I went to Prudential Connecticut Realty, and they were bought out by Berkshire Hathaway. Mm-hmm. And then from Berkshire Hathaway, I was there for several years and did really well there. I was their number one single producing agent. I represented a subdivision that really kicked off my career. It was the same subdivision of the that I worked at when I was in construction, like 6 or 7 years. Really cool God story there. I'll tell it quick because I give glory to God and everything. So I was working construction and I was building this pathway. And all my friends were at college. I had dropped out of college, and I just remember taking these bricks, and I was building up this path. And I remember one day I was so angry. I was angry at God. I was angry at my life, and I slammed the bricks down on the pavement. I remember crying. I saw the teardrops hit the brick, and I was pissed off. My hands started, they were bleeding from these bricks, and I was like, "This is the worst work in the entire world. I wish I was doing cool stuff with my life, and I'm not." And I was angry. And little did I know is that years later, as the progression would have, I thought things were bad that were happening when, construction failed. I got in with appraising, I got in on real estate, and then I pitched the builder, and he had not sold out a subdivision. And I pitched him once, I lost. Guy didn't go with me. Pitched him twice, didn't go with me. He called me for a third time, said, "Come on, pitch me one more time." And I walked up that brick pathway that I had built years ago and signed $10 million worth of listings.
That's great.
And walked back out that path. And I cried again on that same brick pathway because, God had met me years later with provision when I absolutely needed it. So I give glory to God for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, so... went from there to Keller Williams, and I went there. They have a lot of great stuff. Learned the Red Book, learned the path about how to grow a team. And the idea behind the team was, look, there's actually a lot of business models that are happening that are out there, right? You've got 3 different businesses that actually need to run at one time. Like you've got your CEO hat, which is how do I go and get business as a real estate agent? Sales and marketing. I need to go get business every day, lead gen and lead follow up. Then I've got my COO hat, which is my operations and systems. How do I build better systems for my business? How do I actually service the clients every single day? And that can be a full-time job. Then I got another full-time job, which is measuring what matters, research and development. It's financial reviews, and that's the CFO category of like, how do I actually make sure that this business is profitable and that I'm doing well, and monitoring my lead sources and checking ROI and checking in, and how do we talk all together? And that's why real estate agents feel so incredibly spread thin. They feel like butter spread over bread so thinly that they're just not sure, like, where do I go today? Do I film a podcast today? Do I go out and show a property? Do I follow up with leads? Maybe I should go and find Zillow stuff. What do I do today? And the problem is that you're spread so thin because it's actually 3 full-time jobs. And the business has done a horrible job. Brokerages have done a horrible job thinking you're going to make so much money when actually what they're telling you is, come work for me. You're going to squander your time. You're going to be running around tizzy, but it doesn't matter because when you sell a couple of houses, whether that's 3 or 30, I'm going to make a piece off of that. And my job as a broker or whatever it is just to make sure everyone's happy and no one leaves. And it's this really, really weird thing. And so I kind of realized that years into the business, and I realized this at Keller Williams, and I saw what they were doing. I was like pretty impressed with it. And I saw these teams and what the possibility could be for these businesses within businesses. So essentially the way I see it, Jay, is the brokerage is a business that provides national branding, large tech, huge events, E&O, a broker that keeps you out of jail. That's your job. But then I saw the agent who is still left with these 3 jobs, the CEO, COO, and CFO, massive jobs. It could be 40 hours a week. And they're trying to figure out, where do I spend my time? And so I saw the opportunity for a team. And the team's business model, this is what I run, is the ability to say, okay, there's 180 steps in the process, just the CEO and COO process of generating leads and following up and servicing the client. Never mind all the other stuff. What if we took 80 to 90% of those off your plate? And normally if you started a business and you said, I want to open up Starbucks here, right? You're going to need beans and distributors and delivery, and you're going to need barista. You're going to need all that stuff. But let's say all you wanted to do was just be a barista. You wanted to serve coffee. What would it be like if we took care of all the back-end operations? We did the leasing, we made the branding, we did all that stuff for you. And we just allowed you to do the biggest thing, most important thing that we could never do, which is develop relationships in your community and allow you to do that. And in exchange for that, because There's so much that goes into it. We're going to basically do 2 full-time jobs for you and allow you to focus on one. We're going to, instead of that being a cost to you where you pay us like payroll every single week and month and year, you pay it as a cost of sale out of your business. So when you do a deal, you split with us. And the idea here is we're going to go a step further. We're not only going to help you solve it as services, we're going to bring you revenue as well by providing leads to you to help you grow even faster. So we're going to give you an injection of business to your business, and we're going to help you service the business, help you with your sales, marketing, and all these other services in the background. What if we did that for you? What would that look like for you? And those who actually, you and I were talking before we started here, and I was talking about one of my coaching programs that I'm on. And one of the guys this morning said, it's not about those who want to be a part of the program or need to be a part of the program. It's those who do the program. And those who follow this model, they're the agent, it's a business, they're in a brokerage, that's a business, they're on the team and they follow that business. Man, sky's the limit. That's when it can truly start to rocket for them because they're not spread so thin. Now, is it possible, Jay, to be your own broker and you're the broker and you're the solo show and you just do everything by yourself and you keep your whole... Sure, but it's not scalable. At some point, you're going to get tired, sick, lazy. Something's going to happen to you. You're a human being. And you shut the lights off and then it's done. And then the other side of it is you could be a real estate agent working under a broker and it's the same thing. They're going to provide a little bit for you and you're going to do the whole thing yourself. But then eventually you're going to get tired, sick, or lazy. And what I mean by late, like you're going to get in your head or something happens, you have a down year and your income's going to be inconsistent. So that's why I really I saw the opportunity with team and I've never turned back because I saw it for myself and I see it for others.
Got it. So what does your team consist of?
In terms of agents or in terms of staff?
How would you break your team down? How would it run? I mean, of course, you're the top, you're the head, you're the leader. Where does it go from there?
It's an interesting model that I believe in hierarchy and I believe in that there always should be someone who's responsible at the end of the day. And you call me the leader. I appreciate that. I thank you for that. But I would suggest that what I've built as a company leader is I've leaned into one of my core values. We have 4 core values on our team. Our 4 core values are give a shit, figure it out, family matters, and grow to lead, lead to grow. And I'll talk about my that 4th one right here, which is grow to lead and lead to grow. I found that any brokerage, any company, which is all about one person, where it's always one guy or gal who's at the lead, that's important because you need someone who takes the blame. You need someone who can take some, whatever responsibility, I'll call it. But there's a shortcoming to that. There's a story in the Bible about Moses, and I don't know what you believe or your audience believes, it doesn't matter, but there's a story in the Bible about a guy named Moses who eventually takes on a huge responsibility to lead these people of Israel out of a place called Egypt, and eventually he gets to this spot where all these people are asking him, hey man, you got to solve my problems. You got to help me with this stuff. And he's judging every single day. And brokers and team leaders can feel like this every day. Help me with my comps. Help me with my, I need help logging into this software. Hey, can you help me with my email with it? There's all these problems. And so Moses' uncle, Jethro, comes along to him and says, hey, Moses, this is not good for one man to bear all of this. Set up some leaders who can walk with you. And so I really took that to heart. And I said, okay, how do we do this in a way that makes sense in my community, in my place of the world? And for me, I realized, well, there's 2 things. Number one, if it's all about David, then if David leaves or he's sick or he's tired or he's lazy, the whole thing crashes. And if David steps out and it's not valuable anymore, well, then really what did you grow? You grow an ego business. You grew something that was about you. Right? So I get it that, there's, talk about, Starbucks, Howard Schultz, right? He stepped out of the business and it became something different. You had to step back in as CEO. There's times where the leader has to step back in because of a certain skill set, calling, gifting, abilities, whatever that is. But the idea is that the business should be able to run without you. And so what we're leaning into heavily is the creation of leaders, developing leaders through a specific process of weekly, monthly huddles, mentorship, books, training, language, all of this stuff that talks about leadership and how we can actually build people on the team who are capable and qualified and equipped to be able to lead others, so that the guy who sells 20 houses one year is able to help the guy who sells 5. And the guy who sells 5, it might not be able to give a whole lot when it comes to deal doctoring, but he can certainly teach you how to log into your email, because you know what, he's done that step at least. Right. And so it's this empowerment idea that we've really leaned into, and that's allowed other people to be able to enter into our organization, and for everything not to come to staff or to myself. And so when you ask the question, what does my team look like? It's really just, if you wanted to join a company that was all about a whole bunch of leaders and the opportunity for you to become a leader and for you to lead others and be equipped in order to do so, and then even on top of that, earn revenue based upon all those who you lead, that's pretty impactful. And we found that that's been very attractive for people, because at some point in time, someone wants to say, like, look, I've learned this business. I've done pretty well. Like, I think it's time for me to go and flap my wings, and I want people to. And if that's with us, amazing. And if that's not, that's okay too. But we want to create a world that's large enough for other people to create their worlds inside of that, if they want to. Because some people might say, like, listen, I want my name, it doesn't have to be on the door, but I want to be able to lead, train, and motivate people. I want my life to have impact. I want to have purpose with that, but I don't want to have to create manuals on how to do things and SOPs. I don't want to have to deal with payroll taxes, hiring, firing, delegating. I don't want to have to deal with leases and, paying the electric bills. And I don't want to have to deal with, people, having problems over commission splits and all that stuff. So can you just handle all that for me? But I'll train and lead and motivate agents. And so that's what we've created. We've got a team about, I want to say 10 or so leaders who dive in. And that's our leadership organization. And then outside of that, we've got a director of operations, an operations manager. We've got ISAs, or inside sales agents, who follow up with leads. We have an entire suite of international team members who help edit videos for people, write their offers for them, schedule showings for them. I mean, the whole thing is taken care of from start to finish. If you wanted to do anything in this business, we'll take that off of your shoulders. The only thing we want you to do is just be that community leader, that person who's interacting with people who raise their hand about real estate, be their best friends from the front sidewalk to the rear fence and everything in between. And we empower you to do that through providing all those resources, scripts to say, deliverables for them, all the possible events that you would want to do. And then we go a step further and to say, we'll take care of all your listings, all your marketing's paid for you, your transactions, your transaction manager handles all of the transaction for you once you put it under contract. I mean, every step in the process, Jay, is leveraged so that the real estate agent only has to focus on outbound lead generation and servicing their clients.
So it sounds like you're a brokerage within a brokerage.
Yeah, so people call that, they almost call it like a teamerage. And so when you say brokerage within a brokerage, the only reason I'd push back is because brokerages can never do what we do. They can't. There's no possible way. And the reason is because a brokerage is focused on a quantity model. It is all agent count based. It is how many agents can I recruit that I'm going to get a specific piece of, and I'm going to provide a limited availability of value to it, because I can't there's no way that they can start to flex in their, they can't flex in terms of like any direct support to people, because if I do it for one, I have to do it for all. And the brokerage model is constantly competing against other brokerage models. And the brokerage model today is a race to the bottom. It's, in my brokerage, no one pays more than $16,000 a year to the brokerage, right? People on my team pay $4,000 to the brokerage. There's no way, you can't provide direct support at $4,000 a person. You can't. You can provide large events. You can provide E&O. You can provide national branding. You can provide that, but you can't do that on such a limited scale. The only way you'd have to do that as a brokerage is you'd have to be able to take a significant cut, because there is no free lunch. And the only way someone's helping you in this business is, there's altruism, but someone's got to be getting paid at the end of the day. Someone wants to, dude, if I'm going to sit with you for 3 hours and help you grow your business plan, I might do that once or twice because you know what? You're a nice guy, right? But at some point, you've got to be getting compensated for your time. And I've realized that in my mentor program. And a lot of brokerages have realized that in their mentor programs. Why? Because the office manager and the team leader, man, they've got 400 people reporting to them. That's the whole goal. And so if you have 400 people, you can't sit down and do 400 business plans a year. But that's even one a day. You couldn't do it. So there's no way that you could possibly do your jobs as a broker owner that way. So you say it's like a brokerage within it. I'm satisfying. We're trying to, some people call us teamerages. We're like in between where it's like you could operate in our team and not need as much of the big brokers. But even that I push back. I'd be like, dude, there's stuff that DXP is providing that I can never provide. They provide a revenue share program that I could never touch. I could never do it. That's why I'm not my own broker. I don't want the liability. I can't provide the revenue share. I can't provide the stock. I can't provide the big events. I can't provide all that stuff that a huge brokerage could provide. So I'm kind of like, hey man, let's just get a clear understanding of what brokerage does, what team does, and what the agent should do. And I think as soon as people get clarity over that, man, that clarity is power, and that allows you to do your business better.
Yeah, I do notice a lot of EXP agents. They run a group or they run a team. I noticed that as a kind of a trend. So is there a limit as to how many people you put on your team, or is it up to you?
Oh, that's a good question, man. That's a fire question. I haven't gotten asked that question in a long time. So props to you, man. I think, is there a limit? I am limited by the leadership. So John Maxwell talks about this. He calls it the law of the lid. And the law of the lid means that you basically go to the capacity of your leadership ability. So the amount of people that I am able to handle is based upon my own level of leadership multiplied by the level of leadership of all my team members. So if people talk about brokerages and how they grow, we see individual brokerages probably go to about 15 is like where like mom and pop shops are anywhere between, a couple of people, maybe 5 or 10, capping out at like 15 to 20. It's a level of leadership. When you step outside of yourself and you let other people lead and take the reins, then it can go greater from there.
Right, that's why you see a lot of brokerage companies buying over other companies, adding managers.
Yeah, because they've got a level of leadership
Right.
that was able to sustain
That's a good point.
the amount of people. Yeah, you brought up an awesome question, man, because the law of the lid always applies. And it is a good mirror for ourselves and our own hearts as to what level of leadership we have. If we're leading from a place of vision, clarity, power, empowerment, if we're leading from all of those rather than force, fear, manipulation, greed, pride, all those things, then we can lead a lot more people positively and it will grow organically.
How do you choose somebody?
Yep. Good question. So we've got our 4 core values, which I already stated, give a shit, figure it out, grow to lead to grow, and family matters. So kind of go into those. You know what it's like if someone aligns with your core values or not. I just, over the years, I have had a lot of people join my team and a lot of people leave my team.
Right.
And I used to be like super personally offended and sad. I still get sad when people leave my team because it's like you build and grow a relationship with them and you see hopes and potentials and people can opt in or out of that, whatever. But, one of the biggest things about it is like sometimes like y'all were never aligned with your core values anyhow. Like what matters to you might not matter to somebody else. And in that, it's only a matter of time. Like if you and I got into business with each other and you and I didn't align on like family matters, and let's say that we'll put it on me. Let's say your core value is family matters and mine wasn't. And I texted you all the time, 7, 8 o'clock at night, or I called you at 7, 8 o'clock at night and I was like, what's up, Jay? Let's talk shop. And you were like, bro, I'm with my family right now. Or like I blew you up on vacation. Or like you tried to take a Sabbath day, or you tried to take like any rest, or like you cut out and were like, hey man, I need you to take this listing appointment because I got to go spend time with my family because someone needs me or there's an emergency. Like that's family matters. I have people in my corner who are like that. They will back me up. They will be there for me. But if you pull that with someone who's like, no, bro, like the show must go on. If you got that mentality, then it's like, it's only a matter of time before it's like, well, why didn't you show up? Like, I know you're sick. I know you're not feeling good, but like, you got to be here. You got to make your calls. You got to do your stuff. And it's like, cool, we're going to part ways. If you know someone, like you show up and you like ask the person behind the counter, like they make your coffee. I'm going to just use coffee now forever for my example.
Yeah.
You get a guy who like pours your coffee and it kind of spills over the edge, and he just slams the cap back down. He slams it on, and the coffee drips down there. And he doesn't take that towel away the edge. You know that's the difference of give a shit. And the reason I left the expletive in there is simply because if I say like care a lot, that doesn't hit. If I say like make it count, you're like, I think so, it's there. But if you say, man, why couldn't somebody just give a shit around here? It hits. You know exactly what I'm talking about. So those are core values that I'm like, you gotta be along those lines. And then grow to lead, lead to grow. I have a friend of mine in the industry, absolutely fantastic human being. She's a lone wolf. And she's like, she was on my team for a little while, and awesome human being. Awesome, right?
Hard to find a lone wolf.
Lone wolf, and like wants to do her own thing, be her own person, like do her own thing. Don't bother me. I'm gonna come into the office, clock out. Like, don't bother me. Great producer, but as much as she gives a shit, she is big on family matters. She will figure it out. She's got all that dialed in. There's one core value she does not align with me, which is grow to lead, lead to grow.
Oh, really?
Which is, dude, my whole model is I want you to grow as a human being, so that you lead other people. But if it's I don't want to lead other people, then pretty soon it's going to come to, the trajectory and the runway for our relationship time in business, not personal, but in business, is going to come to an end because you don't align. So how do you choose? Core values. Core values every day of the week. It's not how many sales do you want to do. I could ask you, Jay, how many sales do you want to do this year? You're like 45, 55, 100. I don't know what your production is, right? You could tell me that and I'd be like, great, you're awesome, man. But like, if you're going to be on your own and never show up, if you're there, like most brokers would be like, great, I'll still take a cut of Jay, but I never see him. For us, it's like, yeah, but you're going to like talk to other people about not going to the team meeting, and you're going to talk to other people about not showing up, and you're going to talk to people how you don't need the team services, and you're going to talk to people about
that's kind of deep,
all that stuff. And now all of a sudden I've got 3 people who are thinking about leaving, not one. You see what I'm saying? It's like now I got a family matters problem. So that's why core values are so important. And then the other one, it comes from a system. We run our company off of, I don't know if you ever heard of EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating Systems, but
I've heard lately EOS.
Yeah, so look into that stuff, man. It's really, really powerful. It changed our business dramatically. I cannot say that we follow it to a T, but what I can say is that by God's grace, we were able to grow to a level where I couldn't remember everything that was going on all the time, right? Like I cannot tell, like we have 2 offices and 56 agents and 90,000 plus leads in the database and 40 different training programs. Like there's so much happening in the office at any one time. There's no possible way I can keep it in my head. And I'm thankful for that. That's a good problem to have. So you can either solve problems with like getting crazy and manic about this stuff and getting micromanaging, or you can just specify when does this problem or this thing need to be measured? How do we report it? When does the urgency come up? And you can kind of really get systems around it. And EOS allowed us to take a step in a really good direction for that. That allowed us to be able to stabilize things. And so now I know that every Thursday at 11 o'clock in the morning, so today we met, some core group members meet, and we run what's called a level 10 meeting. And that level 10 meeting just goes over the top priorities of financials in the business. I'm not worrying. I'm going to panic on the weekend. Why? Because I know on Thursdays we're going to talk about finances. And I don't need to worry about the lead flow because I know at Fridays at 10 o'clock I talk about that. So learning as we grew to, itemize when and where we find, these metrics and when we talk about them was really important to us. And then EOS also showed us to get back to your original question, these 3 questions that you really ask people, and they have to align to as well. So we've got our core values, but then we layer it with one other. And Patrick Lencioni talks about this in he has a pyramid of trust and it's the opposite is dysfunctional teams and functional teams. And the underlying of all of those are 3 qualities that you find in human beings. And we look to align with these 3 qualities. It is humble, hungry, and smart. Humble, hungry, smart. And what we've found is that people who are humble are willing to understand that, look, I may have been doing this for a long time, but I'm willing to learn from somebody else. I'm always teachable. always willing to learn from somebody. I can learn from you. I can learn from anybody here. If you have that idea of humility, now all of a sudden you realize, okay, I know I've been doing this for 10 years and I just joined David's team. He's got a way of doing a buyer consult or seller consult. I might not have to do that exactly, but I'm going to learn his way because there might be something for him to glean from me and me to glean from him. And then, you know what? I've got some humility because, you know, I know that this business is about me and I'm pretty pumped about it and I'm a cocky real estate agent, but I realize I'm humble enough to realize it's okay. It's really more about the client. Mm-hmm. And you know what? We got to do is right for. So I need people like that. And then, so there's humble and then hungry. There's a lot of real estate agents who I meet and I ask them what their goals are. And they'll be like, man, I'm going to sell $100,000 worth of real estate this year. And, you know, I'm going to do this for my family. I'm going to do all that stuff. I'm like, okay, cool. Mm-hmm. And it looks like hunger. But my daughter gets hungry and she's 5.
Yeah.
And she's hungry for chicken nuggets. She loves chicken nuggets.
Yeah, what 5-year-old doesn't? Right?
What grown man doesn't love chicken nuggets, right? She loves chicken nuggets. And she loves bagels with cream cheese and strawberry jam. And she's hungry for that.
Yeah. She's
not hungry necessarily for broccoli. All the time.
Right.
Okay? So I'll go, here's my analogy with this. Shiloh is my daughter.
Great.
Typically wants chicken nuggets, and she loves tater tots.
That's the go-to.
That's the go-to.
Right.
Agents love ready leads that are completely pre-qualified and ready to buy a house.
Right.
I'm hungry.
Right.
I'm so hungry for that.
Yeah.
That's what I'm hungry for.
Right.
I'm hungry for that lead. Cool. If I heated up chicken nuggets and tater tots at any time, day or night, my daughter would eat them.
Mm-hmm.
Shiloh I'd be like, honey, ready for lunch, ready for breakfast. She could eat it for any time.
Right.
And then most agents would love to get that served up for them. Mm-hmm. However, Jay, if I said, Shiloh, I got some snack for you, and it's broccoli and some blueberries and something else, she might eat it if she's hungry enough. Mm-hmm. And the reality of the business is chicken nuggets and tater tots is more of like, hey, we're having that once or twice a week. But the majority of the week, if I need you to be healthy and strong, is you got to eat your blueberries and your broccoli. And you got to get hungry enough to be able to eat that. And that's something that's really hard to teach because humility, you can't teach it to people. These are humble, hungry, and smart. You can't teach them. You cannot teach someone to be humble. Life teaches you to be humble. God teaches you to be humble. Mm-hmm. Your circumstances and your failures and the recognition through self-awareness teaches you to be humble. Mm-hmm. Hungry is something that's the difference between desire and need. And want and lack and all those things. If someone is in a position where they're like, I'm hungry, you know it. It's like, dude, you got a rental? I'm there. I'll still do rentals to this day. Why?
Yeah.
Because I'm humble to, by God's grace, to an extent of whatever, right? And hungry enough to say, I know how I can handle this.
Right.
So I got to have the hunger. So when someone says I'm going to earn $100,000, I'm going to sell X amount, I'll be like, great. How hungry are you? I'm so hungry, Dave. Hungry enough to get 2 under contract within your first 60 days? Oh, I'm hungry enough. Okay, awesome. So let me just tell you, I know you have a desire. That is going to be found by backing that up, by making X amount of calls in order to reach X amount of people, in order to have X amount of conversations in front of them, in order to have X amount of conversions, in order to have X amount of showings, and we walk through that pipeline. You that hungry? I'm that hungry. Awesome. Check in 1 week. How hungry are you? So hungry. How many calls did you make? None. You ain't hungry. You ain't hungry.
Ain't that the truth?
So that's the hungry part that we line up with that you can't teach people. And then the last one is smart. And this one sounds kind of cocky, but without going into it too much, if I got to explain to you how to set up a printer and what a PDF is, I'll give you a little bit of time to Google it and go to our core value and figure it out.
Right.
But there's some smart stuff that you have to be able to. I'm not asking you on an IQ scale that you have to make some certain benchmark because I'll fall short in a lot of rooms. But you do have to have the ability to say, I can be resourceful. and I can try to figure this out. And that's smart too, right? You know, I definitely am not the most intelligent person in the room by a long shot. But I can be smart enough to say, look, with the intelligence that I do have, how resourceful can I get? Because resourcefulness is a multiplier.
Yeah, that's the key.
And so how smart are you? And you quickly find that out within about the first 60 days of someone being on your team, right? During your organization. Because you're going to say, like for us, we have a 500-step onboarding plan to make sure you succeed in real estate.
500 steps.
500 steps. If you join us and it's week 3, day 5, I've got something for you. It's literally put on your calendar in a Kajabi course. You click on it. There's a video from me talking about stuff. There's check marks that you have, a progress bar on the way. Your mentor's updated. My admin staff sees where you're at.
Mm-hmm.
If you're like, what do I do next? And I'm like, yo, you clearly have everything you need to do with 1 to 2 hours a day of onboarding tasks, and the rest is go build your business, and we teach you how to. If you can't figure that out, sorry, but humble, hungry, smart, like you're not aligning. It's a clear pathway of thanks so much. I appreciate our opportunity to trial this potential to be in business together and partner.
Right.
We find it advantageous to you for you to find another route to be successful in life, and that's okay.
Right, and that happens a lot.
Yeah. So I've never interviewed someone who I'm like, they're not going to be successful, and then like it's just like it's really hard to tell up front if someone's going to be very hard, right? Like someone walks into an office dressed as nicely as you, I'm gonna be like, man, that guy cares about himself, cares about his appearance, cares about how he cares for himself. Probably how he cares about himself is how he cares about everything, right? How we do anything is how we do everything. So I would assume that of you. But like, let's say you just were putting on a show for me and then like never called your leads, or let's flip it around and I'll put myself in the scenario and like I never did my job. Then it's like you have every right in the world to be like, Dave, hey, we shouldn't be in business together, right? And so like there's always presentation, but then there's the depth to it. And it's like there's a lot of talk, but I would say let your walk be your talk.
Yeah, and it's hard in this business, you know, and that's I think it's a lot of reason why there's so much scrutiny on realtors from the public. You know, all you're gonna do is put us on the MLS. Why would I list with you?
Yeah.
You know, why don't I just try to sell it on my own?
Great question.
You know, that type of thing. Your leads, you mentioned leads. You're paying for your leads and you're giving them to your realtors, or are any of them producing their own leads?
Yeah, so we're about 70%, about 70% sphere of influence.
Yeah.
So that's like people from your own community.
Mm-hmm.
And probably 25% online leads.
Right. So you're making them come up with their own database, like their own sphere of influence.
What we're trying to do is teach people that business doesn't just come from one place. Okay. So when I was at Prudential Connecticut Realty, for instance, no longer in existence in Connecticut.
Yeah, it sounds so old when you say Prudential.
I know, right?
Yeah, I haven't heard it in a while.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
Yeah.
Those guys were like Buffini obsessed, and I love Buffini.
They were. Yeah, I love Buffini.
Buffini's the man.
Yeah, he's in the crowd too.
He's like the OG, one of the OGs.
Yeah.
At least from my recollection.
Yeah,
he's not like Zig Ziglar or something like that. But so anyways, that guy's awesome, but it's all about your sphere, right? It's like 100%.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, right. And I got this guy, this awesome guy on our team. He's a business partner of mine, Will Chase. Dude comes down from Boston. He's like, I have no sphere whatsoever.
No, he doesn't like to touch him.
Like none. Like I don't know anybody. Everyone I know is up in Boston and they're doing their thing. And I'm like, all right, Will, like who do you? He's like, I got a business owner that's here and like my wife and like some other place I used to work. Like I don't know anybody.
He's not from the area.
Yeah, so it's like, okay, cool. I can go straight up Buffini on him. Like,
right.
All right, reach out to your sphere. He's like, I have no sphere. Buffini would be like, go make a sphere, you know, like get into your community. And it's like, I got to eat today. Like, how can I eat today? So that's where the team comes in and provides, you know, online leads to people.
Got it.
So we do spend a significant amount. Like we're probably producing, on average, it's between 400 and 600 leads a month that we send to our team, no rentals. And we divvy those out. And, you know, that's a huge piece where people can have the opportunity to meet people who they wouldn't otherwise know, these not mets, And
that's a big help.
Dude, it's unreal. And if you're brand new in the business or you're super experienced, I have one of my top producers, great business partner of mine, Carla Corrigan. Awesome. She's like 90% online leads.
Is she?
And she's, she's, I don't know, she looks 40 years old. And she's not 40 years old. She's a little older. And she's killing it, man. She's just running around.
Yeah.
She's just, she's got endless energy. And that's because she gets pumped up by these opportunities to meet new people coming into the state.
Yeah.
And so she loves the online leads. And so I think online leads are an important part because it allows you to demonstrate to people and not pass on your own sphere. So for instance, let's say, the classic team leader or broker model is, well, I'm really busy, so I'll get somebody to join me and then I'll give them some of the people who I can't handle. Bad move, bro.
Okay.
Bad move.
Okay.
And the reason is because I let's say you're the broker and I join you and everyone loves you, Jay, but if they start working with me, they might love me a little bit too. And so when they close the deal and then they move on, they're like, thanks so much, Jay. Thanks, David. But like the next time, like who follows up with them? You or me or both? Whose lead is it? Well, I guess it's yours. But then they we reach out to Dave. Hey, Dave, we had a great experience with you. I'm going to refer you over to this guy.
Right.
Now all of a sudden, Guillermo calls me and he's like, hey, what's up, man? I heard you were working with my friend. I'm like, yeah, shoot.
Right.
Well, they were actually Jay's. So who's his client?
Right.
And it starts doing that.
Right.
And I did that in the beginning, and then a lot of people from my church, I was actually referring to a team agent of mine who's no longer on my team.
And they got the people now.
And they got the people now.
Right.
And so it's like, you got to really think this through a few different levels.
Oh yeah, when you're at the top, definitely. That happens a lot with Zillow leads. Zillow leads in general. Say that you get a lead source and they say you got to pay them at closing, whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
After you produce the lead, and once that lead, you pay them that one time. Now you're going with the lead, and you don't know what they're going to produce in the future.
Dude, there's a huge gap in this business between the ability for people to look for someone to hand them the business and for the people who know how to go and get it. And I'll specify this for those who may listen and are in real estate. In real estate, you are a marketer. Here's what I mean. You are in the business of providing something of value that someone will exchange the consent to contact. Exchange the consent to contact with their own personal information in exchange for that value. When that happens, you get a lead. That is how a lead is created. I produce something of value. You want that something of value, so you will exchange the consent to contact with contact information. Zillow does this every day by saying, here's what your house could be worth. Or here's some new listing that hit the market. Or here's what's happening with local schools. Or here's some best practices for home buying. They produce all of this value that customers say, I like that value. I will log into Zillow and give them my name, email, phone, address, etc. In order to connect that. And now Zillow has the permission to reach out and provide that contact information to realtors who buy it. But what if, Jay, crazy idea, we did that ourselves? What if we did that?
Right.
What if we just said on Facebook and on Instagram and on any portals that were out there, what if we built our own websites? What if we potentially was like, hi, here are some of the 10 tips that I found in order to improve your value over the course of selling over 3,000 homes in my career. Would you download that? Like, maybe I would. When? If I wanted to sell my house. So then they click on something, they put in their name, email, phone, and they download. Now I have their email address. And now if I continue to provide them things that are like, here's some best practices to, keep your house with top maintenance orders. Here's the 5 mistakes when selling a home. Here's the 3, best places to eat in Hartford. Like, those are things that are like, oh, I find them valuable. So I continue to go to David Brooke for this content over and over. Content being substance.
I like the way you think.
So if I don't provide that substance to you, and the only thing that I do is ask, here's what happens. If I have no trust in a bank account that we have together, when we form a relationship, an imaginary bank account gets created between you and me, Jay. We just met today. An imaginary bank account has been placed. You and I do this podcast together, and like somehow a little bit of value is placed in that account for you and I. Because I'm like, he's a cool guy, dresses well, showed awesome strength in the way that he reached out, asked me to go on his podcast, all this stuff. A little bit of money goes in the bank account. At some point in time, if you called me up and was like, hey man, can you help me out on this? I can't figure out the value on this house. I'd be like, absolutely, Jay. Why? Because you would swipe the credit card on that account, the debit card, and I'd be like, we've got something in there. If you called me up out of nowhere, I might do it, but I got to do it out of altruism. I got to do it out of credit.
Right.
I got to do it out of because I'm a nice guy.
Right.
But if I'm running around, I got a crazy day, I'd be like, thanks so much, bro. Like, put me on the calendar in like a week or two. Call my assistant Hazel or Pablo. We'll put you on the calendar, man. Would love to chat with you.
Mm-hmm.
But there's nothing in the account. So because you and I have a little bit of value in the account, that works. Now let's relate that on over to a lead. If all you're doing is, hey man, I saw you were reaching out about 123 Main Street.
Mm-hmm.
You interested in going to see it today? Like, unless they're like, yeah, man, that's value to me because I want to go see it today. Great. But if you're like, hey man, I saw you reached out 2 days ago about 123 Main Street. Do you want to see other properties? That's more of an ask.
Mm-hmm.
That's more or less like, can I send you stuff? And they're like ghosting. People are like, why are they ghosting me? Because you're not providing anything of value to them.
Right.
Which leads to finally, Jay, the last big thing. Agents must look in the mirror and say, what value do I provide?
Absolutely.
What actually am I doing for people? Which is why there's this whole NAR lawsuit. Because they've never done anything of value. They don't actually know how to evaluate homes. Buy my course. They don't know exactly how to, help someone increase the value of their home. They've never hosted a community event that is actually cool for people. They've never knocked on their door and said, how are you? Or how can I help you? They've never done anything like that. So there's no money in the bank account. Mm-hmm. So by the time that they say, hey, do you know of anyone who's looking to buy, sell, or invest in real estate, Jay? You're like, I'll keep you in mind. Right. And what's that basically saying? Declined.
Right.
Declined.
Don't call me again.
Don't call me again. And the worst happens with this. If you called me up tomorrow and said, hey man, can you take me to the airport? Right? Can you watch my property? I might be like, Jay, listen, I know we had that podcast together, but I don't know about, right? We'd overdraw. And the problem that I see agents have all the time, man, is they're forming relationships that are 5 cents deep with a lead. And they're asking for $200,000 swipes.
Right.
Do you want to buy a house with me? Do you want me to be the representative for you on one of the biggest purchases in your life?
Right.
And you're thinking, because you offered to open a door, that you're the guy to do it? Bro, what value do you bring to the table? So I teach agents how to bring value.
Well, I'll tell you what, you seem like the guy to do it. Very good at talking, very good at teaching, getting points across. Well, I think that ends our show right here. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, no worries, man. This was fun.
Sincerely. Mr. David Brooks, where can I reach you?
Yeah, sure. So you can hit me up on Instagram, David N. Brooke, or follow our team account at Brooke Group Official. Be awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. Find us on TikTok, same thing, or our website, brookgrouprealestate.com.
Yeah, man. Hey, listen, I wish you the best, man.
Thank you,
Hopefully we do a deal together one day. You don't really do too many deals anymore, do you?
No,
Not as much as you used to, probably.
I used to do like 60 to 80 deals. Now I do like 30 deals.
Well, you got to concentrate on building. Now I get it. Well, God bless you, man. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, dude.
All right. Well, this ends our show, Property Perspectives. We'll see you again.